We live in a world where cold is a weakness. Your body starts to shiver the moment the temperature drops. Your blood vessels constrict, your core temperature plummets, and within hours, your sophisticated modern body shuts down. This is the physiological reality for almost every human on the planet. But deep in the unforgiving Himalayas, a tradition has existed for 1,000 years that completely defies this biological imperative. Imagine sitting naked on a mountain peak in the middle of a blizzard, temperatures well below freezing, and not only surviving, but generating enough internal heat to dry wet sheets draped over your shoulders. This isn't a miracle. It is the practice known as Tummo, the inner fire yoga, and it is perhaps the most profound example of human control over the autonomous nervous system ever recorded. This is the story of how ancient Buddhist monks mastered cold, and what modern science is finally learning about their impossible power. If you find the boundaries of human potential fascinating, hit the like button and subscribe. It helps us uncover more of these hidden human truths. For centuries, the accounts of Tummo were dismissed as myth or exotic folklore. The idea that a human could consciously regulate their own body temperature, overriding the survival mechanisms hardwired into our DNA, seemed preposterous. We are taught that the autonomous nervous system is exactly that, autonomous, automatic, beyond conscious control. But in the latter half of the 20th century, scientists began to take these claims seriously, spurred by extraordinary demonstrations that forced them to rewrite the textbooks on human physiology. They discovered that the monks were not just enduring the cold, they were actively manipulating their metabolism to create heat, a feat previously thought impossible for an adult human. The lineage of Tummo stretches back to the 11th century, tied heavily to the legendary Tibetan yogi Milarepa. Milarepa, known for his intense austerities and poetic songs, spent years meditating naked in the glacial caves of Tibet. For him, the cold was not merely a challenge, it was an essential tool for accelerating spiritual awakening. Survival itself became a form of intense meditation. In those early days, the practice was harsh and secretive. It was a matter of necessity for survival in the high-altitude, oxygen-deprived climate of the Himalayas. The monks needed to survive the night, and they needed a solution that required no external resources, no fire, no heavy clothing. The only fuel available was their own internal energy. Tummo provided that fuel. The ultimate test of a Tummo practitioner, which sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, was the rasog or wet sheet test. Initiates, after years of rigorous practice, would sit naked in a circle on a frozen lake or snowbank. Monks would dip large cotton sheets in icy water and drape them over the initiates' bodies. The goal was to generate enough heat through meditation and specific breathing techniques to dry the sheets completely. And they didn't just dry one sheet. The most accomplished monks were expected to dry 3 or even 4 sheets before dawn. If they failed the initiation. This was a direct, irrefutable measure of their internal thermal output. For a long time, the only people who truly believed these accounts were those who witnessed them. Western science remained skeptical until a pioneering figure entered the scene, Dr. Herbert Benson, a cardiologist from Harvard Medical School. In the 1980s, Dr. Benson gained unprecedented access to monasteries in Dharamsala, India. His goal was to observe and measure the physiological changes occurring during Tummo meditation. What he documented was staggering. Using thermal probes and rectal thermometers, the gold standard for measuring core temperature, Benson and his team monitored the monks during their cold exposure rituals. They recorded consistent, significant increases in the core body temperature of the practitioners. In one famous study, one monk was observed raising the temperature of his fingers and toes by a remarkable 8.3 degrees Celsius or 14.9 degrees Fahrenheit. This localized heating is critically important because when exposed to cold, the body's natural response is vasoconstriction, the narrowing of blood vessels in the extremities to conserve heat for the vital organs. The monk was doing the exact opposite. He was actively inducing vasodilation, flooding his extremities with warm blood, defying the body's central survival mechanism.
More recent studies, particularly those involving advanced neuroimaging like fMRI and EEG, have begun to peel back the layers of how this is possible, revealing two distinct yet interconnected physiological mechanisms at play.
The first mechanism is the creation of actual heat, often referred to as vase breathing or bumpakan. This involves a precise sequence of forceful inhalations, retention of breath while contracting the abdominal muscles, creating the sensation of a vase, and slow, controlled exhalations. This intense breathing technique, combined with specific visualization practices, appears to activate what scientists call brown adipose tissue, or BAT. BAT is often called the good fat. Unlike white fat, which stores energy, brown fat burns calories to generate heat in a process called non-shivering thermogenesis. While infants and hibernating animals have abundant BAT, it was long believed that adult humans retained only negligible amounts. The Tummo practitioners, through their specialized breathing and cold exposure, seem to be dramatically enhancing the function and potentially the quantity of their brown adipose tissue. The forceful contractions and intense oxygenation act like a bellows, stoking this internal furnace. But the physical generation of heat is only half the story. The true mastery lies in the second mechanism, the complete psychological control over the perception of cold and the autonomic response. Think about the modern response to cold. It's panic. Shivering is a physical manifestation of stress, a signal that the brain is panicking and ordering the muscles to rapidly contract to generate heat. The monks, through years of meditation, bypass this panic button entirely. Studies show that during deep Tummo practice, there is significant activity in the posterior parietal cortex and the insula, areas of the brain associated with self-awareness, body mapping, and emotional regulation. Crucially, they show a marked decrease in activity in the default mode network, or DMN. The DMN is the part of your brain that is active when you are not focused on an external task. It's responsible for self-referential thought, future worrying, and past ruminating, essentially the constant internal monologue. When the DMN is quieted, the brain stops interpreting the external stimulus, the cold, as a threat that requires a stress response. The monks are not merely enduring the pain, they are fundamentally changing how the brain perceives the sensation of cold, treating it as neutral feedback rather than an emergency. This is the key difference between the monk and the modern cold exposure enthusiast.
A modern person, like the famous Wim Hof, uses intense, rapid breathing and visualization to generate heat and manage the shock, effectively mastering the physical side. The ancient monk, however, integrates this physical mastery with a profound level of cognitive control, achieving a state of complete mental equilibrium, where the body's emergency signals are ignored not through brute force, but through deep meditative acceptance. The Tummo practice, therefore, is not just about temperature, it's a masterclass in biofeedback. It demonstrates that the boundary between the voluntary and involuntary nervous system is far more porous than we ever imagined. The monks learned, through relentless practice, how to consciously regulate functions, like blood flow and metabolic rate, that scientists insisted were purely involuntary. The modern implications of this research extend far beyond surviving a blizzard. If the mind can control the body's most basic thermal regulation systems, what else can it control? Researchers are now applying these principles to treat autonomic disorders, chronic pain, and inflammatory conditions. The ability to voluntarily regulate vasoconstriction and vasodilation has immense potential for improving circulation in conditions like Raynaud's syndrome, and the deliberate activation of BAT is a major area of research for obesity and metabolic health. The monks of the Himalayas gave us the ultimate proof. The human body is not a machine dictated solely by genetics and environment. It is an instrument that can be finely tuned, provided you have the right manual, a manual that was written in icy caves 1,000 years ago. The lesson of Tummo is not that we should all run naked into the snow. The lesson is about conscious control. It teaches us that the limits we accept, the stress we tolerate, the pain we endure, the involuntary reactions we assume are unchangeable, are often just deeply ingrained habits of the mind. The inner fire that kept the monks alive in the blizzard is the same inner discipline required to master any challenge in your life. It is the realization that the greatest survival mechanism we possess is not our ability to shiver, but our capacity to focus. What other ancient secrets do you think science needs to investigate? Let me know in the comments below. If this deep dive into human potential resonated with you, please share this video. Until next time, keep questioning the limits of what you believe is possible.